Well, here we go on the 28th of October 2021. We have our second podcast tonight, and it's another one of the special ones. We have a guest that a lot of people have asked for, Allan Cockram. Welcome to a Podful of Saints.
Thank you, chaps. Happy to be here. Happy to talk to you mad lunatic people. Let's keep it clean. No kicking, no biting.
Right, you had a career that spanned quite a wide area, but we're going to try and concentrate on St Albans City. We know it's going to go off track because these things always do.
Of course.
You joined us out 1986-87 season, January. You came from Farnborough. How did that come about?
I think it was Blakey. John Lacey contacted me. I wasn't at Farnborough long. In fact, I was at Crystal Palace, training at Crystal Palace and playing for Farnborough. And I think Blakey contacted me and said, come down. I think Chris Jones was there, who I knew from Spurs and stuff. And then I came down training, as far as I remember. And then that was it. Met Mitch.
And he put you in the team against Wycombe Wanderers. Your first game, a crowd of 1,100. He said a good start. About 300 of them were from St Albans.
How did I play? It's all right.
A long time ago, can't remember how. but you got injured in the game. So here you are. You come from Tottenham before that. You had a couple of games with them. Yep. And you're playing for a couple of weeks in St Albans City reserves. As I recall, you and your dad weren't too happy about that.
No, do you know what? It's funny. I remember writing something. Someone asked me, and it was going from 45,000 to 2 men and his dog with Lasher telling me off. So it was a kind of, but I applied myself. My old man was great, really. He said it doesn't matter where you are, who you're playing for, always give it 100%. I think I scored 2 or 3 goals that game, and they probably wanted to see me, see what I was like, report back from Lasher. And obviously, Lasher gave me a favourable report. And I think I went into the first team the following week. Dave, you will correct me, but maybe something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty soon after. You just had a couple of games reserves and you were back in the...
I remember playing with a little lad in midfield. Who was he? I think he played a couple of games and he looked like a child. He looked like he was under 12s or something. I'm like, I'm playing on a muddy pit. Oh, I can't say that, can I?
No,
we live.
Right. I'll cut it out.
All right. So, yeah, cut that all out, Dave. So, yeah, but I can't remember his name. I think he played a couple of first team games. And I remember thinking I'm playing in midfield with a kid. There's an Alsatian dog that I don't want to go too close to the touchline with on a muddy pitch with a lunatic shouting out. So, yeah, that was my memory. But I can't remember his name. Little lad, Dave.
In the
can't remember anyway.
No, got it somewhere, but there you go. When you came back in the side, Al, you stood out 2-footed and you could score goals from distance. You got the goal of the season and you only played, 13 games that season. But is it something you always worked on as a kid from a midfielder? Because you scored a lot of goals, shooting from distance. Was it something you tried early on?
Yeah, there was it was funny really how life comes about that. When we was at Spurs, you had an upper gym and a lower gym at the whole Old White Hart Lane. It was concrete and brickwork. And there was a scout, Dickie White, old boy Mac, the archetypal, scouting outfit of the day, the Burberry Mac with a flat cap on, kind of big tash and that. And he said to me, "What's your name?" I was there 12 or something. And I said, "Cockram." He got that wrong. And then he said, "Are you left-footed or right-footed?" And I said, "Well, predominantly right." And he said, "Well, take your right shoe off, take your right training shoe off." And he got the ball and he pumped it up as hard as he can. And then he said, "Now you, I won't say it, effing kick with your right foot." So you kicked with your left foot. So all you did was, practice against that wall, getting further and further back. And that was, I suppose, back in the day, a harsh way of kind of ball in the wall training, repetitive training. But yeah, never left me. It always kind of stuck in me. And then also from that, as a right-footed player, you would drag the ball to your, or I would, you'd drag it to your kind of your left-hand side to shoot or to pass the ball. So that was probably a baptism of fire from an old stalwart post-war, really teaching a young kid, well, you can't kick the ball with your right foot now because you're going to break your toes. So now practice with your left foot. And that really, what at Spurs, when I look back, it was futuristic in a way, because for 45 minutes when we got into training, we all trained with tennis balls. So we trained individually with a tennis ball, we trained in pairs with a tennis ball, and then we had a little game in a tennis ball. And then when you picked up the size 4 or 5, it was so easy to play with. So that's really why Spurs, I think, had a lot of gifted midfield players of kind of that generation. Whether you was Hoddle or a young kid coming through, you always aspired to have a good touch, you know.
Does it surprise you these days that not all professional footballers are two-footed?
It's astounding. They still say those words. Was it a gifted left footer? He's got a creative left foot, or you're like, why is that then? Why have you not got a good right foot? He's got a great left foot. Yeah, it is staggering. And I don't know whether, kind of studying sport and psychology a little bit more, whether left-sided people have a different capacity to maybe a right-sided, because I can even write kind of with my left hand a little bit. And I can obviously play, and I can play semi-guitar with my left hand. I actually play it with my left hand. So I don't know whether the left and the right-hand side of the brain are slightly different, if we want to get deep into stuff, why left-footed players can never kick with their right foot, but you can the other way around. I
dare say you go into depth on that in your podcast. We'll plug that later. Right, your first full season, 1987-88. Just looking down, you were scoring for fun. The worst run there was 3 games without a goal, which for a midfielder,
disgusting,
is phenomenal, isn't it?
Disgusting, boy.
Towards the end of the season, you joined Brentford. Were there mumblings during the season that you were hearing that clubs were interested in you again?
Yeah, there was. Well, it was funny because I come back from the States and I trained with. I had a torn Achilles, so I got treatment down at Brentford Football Club. And I was treated there. And then when I got fit after a few months, Perriman said, do you want to carry on training? And I did, and was also playing for St Albans at the same time. So really the luxury of training kind of full time with Brentford and then playing my games for St Albans, and then Brentford coming to watch a few games while I was playing. And obviously that extra fitness level last 10, 15, 20 minutes kind of stood out. And my intention was really always, not disregarding St Albans in any way, shape or form, but was still young enough to probably get him back into the programme and give it a go.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because you had all that full-time training before you dropped out of the game. What was it like adjusting to non-league football in that respect?
I loved it. Oh, it was really, it was not easier, but it was, I don't know, because you're not dealing with full-time. It swings and roundabouts. You're not getting the ball with the right time that you want it, say from a throw-in, or you're checking off to want to receive it right side and stuff. But I just thought, I just liked the whole, for me, St Albans has and always will be kind of a bit like what Brentford is within the Premiership now. It's a community club. It's a club where people stay for years. And I got that feeling when I was there, no matter what was going on. You just got this feeling at Clarence Park because of where it was, but the feeling of warmth from people, and really enjoyed their football. So for me, I didn't even think of it, Tavs, as coming down a level or anything. It was just me probably enjoying it more than at a professional level, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Didn't your dad play a decent level as well?
Yeah, he was at Bristol Rovers as a amateur back in the day. So he kind of played at that level, not too bad. But he was very knowledgeable, my old man, of quite modern in his thinking, and very astute in putting me right.
He was great. Him and Len Clark, two of the best dads for meeting at football matches. You went off to Brentford. I suppose a highlight, FA Cup quarter-final?
Yeah, I mean, for every Brentford supporter up until recent times, it was the biggest game in their history. Number one, number 2, just the whole cup run where we beat Man City, Blackburn, just everything that brought the club together, and then travelling up with the supporters, really, or the supporters travelling up, and then us going into the Kop and talking to our supporters. And it was the year of the blow ups, you know, the blow up bees. We had the big blow up bees and stuff like that. And just now, what you've got is kind of generations going on whereby kids are now adults saying, "Oh, I was at that game with my dad, and I was at that game with my granddad," and they still relive it. I mean, I went to the Liverpool game the other week to watch Brentford, and the programme was full of that time or that day that we played Liverpool. And what was more probably everlasting memory was the Kop giving us an ovation when the game had finished, because the score wasn't reflective, I didn't think, of the game at all. But it was the end of our journey. People still talk about it. It was a lovely memory. And you played really against the champions of Europe at the time, which was fantastic.
I saw you at Brentford once, and I didn't know it at the time, but a sub who came on at half-time was Matt Howard, and he got booked in the first minute. I don't suppose you remember that.
I don't remember getting booked. I remember Matt Howard because he was an apprentice at Brentford, so he used to clean our boots. And then obviously he come to St Albans for a little bit, though, didn't he?
Oh,
his old man was manager, wasn't he, or something?
Yes, he was, yeah. Probably not our most successful one, but he was manager. Right. When you left us, when you went to Brentford, of course, you weren't under contract, so we got diddly squat for you.
Did
they try and get you on contract before you left?
I can't remember. I can't remember. I remember Mitch. Well, Mitch loved a bottom drawer contract, didn't he? So you never knew if you were signed or not. It was back in the day when you'd say, stick that just in case we need to do something. Stick it in the bottom drawer. We don't need to put that through the FA. So I don't know. You better ask Mitch that way.
Cheers, Al. Right. You returned in...
There'll be more cuts of this. You'll get about 10 minutes of footage. You can't say that.
We're sharpening the scissors as we speak. 92, 93. You only came down pre-season just to keep fit, because I think, were you still doing a bit of training at Palace as well then? But then you stayed with us.
Yeah, that was... Who was manager? Who was that?
It was Mitch, a guy called Mitch again.
Still there, Mitch, wasn't he? Yeah, 92, 93. And ended up... I can't remember where I was, mate. Flipping hell, I had more clubs than Jack Nicklaus. But it was... might have been at Cambridge, training at Cambridge. And then you're drawn back to the park, aren't you? You're just drawn back there. And then, to be honest, because I had known Duffs since we were kids, like 12. Prior to that, because I used to play for West London and he'd play for East London. So we were always clashing at schoolboy level. And then he was at QPR. We started off at Tottenham together and then he went to QPR. And we were the same age. So we was always kind of in each other's company, and I knew his family well. And if I'm honest, probably the best partner in midfield I've ever played with for my style of play. Because Duffs would always be there, and he was a fantastic passer of football, great attitude, obviously a screw loose, which I like. I think it's weird if we'd have been in the same pro team together, if we'd have been at Brentford together or QPR or whatever, it would have been a really good midfield duo, if you like, because it was so complementary as a pairing. As a midfield player looking back, what have I got that he hasn't got, and vice versa? It was fantastic for me.
Well, we kicked off that season, first of all, Hitchin in the Hearts charity, but away to Dulwich Hamlet, played at Bromley. Gary Westwood.
Roy
Edwards.
He could
bore
wallpaper off a wall.
Paul Price, Kevin Mars, yourself, Martin Duffield, Sean Brett, Steve Clark scored 3, Dean Williams got 2, Jimmy King and Terry Benning came off the bench. What a side. Now, one I want to pick out from there, because he's a bit of a unsung hero of that lot, Sean Brett. What was he like to work alongside?
Farmer. He was, you could see him kind of plod. He run like he was in a cow field. You know, one of those. He looked a bit dishevelled, very quiet lad, but a real treat to play with because of his work rate. So he had a fantastic work rate. And the hardest thing for any central midfield players to do is to get their wide players tucked in. And Bretty would do it naturally. He would come in and go, oh, that's another half a mile. I haven't got to run today. Bretty's next to me. The farmer's next to me. So he was great for that. And also a really uncanny what I call a mid-step of when he used to take people on and flicking the ball just the right time to get past someone, and a good crosser of the football. So unsung maybe on the terraces, but yeah, you always, when Bretty was in the side, you was happy with. Oh, I was happy with it. Very happy with it.
I think supporters loved him actually, Al. But obviously yourself, Cockram, Clark, Kingy, took all the headlines every time.
Yeah, well, someone's got to do it, haven't they?
Right, Lee, that's the first season you saw a lot of games. Do you want to chip in there?
Yeah, it was. I think I've sort of said this on the pod previously, but it's very rare now these days. You have that fine balance, don't you? You have two proper wingers. It was interesting to sort of hear you talk about the left and the right side, Al. But when you've got a left winger as good as Jimmy King, you don't really sort of need to cut in, do you, on your right? Both deliveries straight onto Clarkie's Swede. They were just a given 2 or 3 times every single game.
Yeah.
But the one thing is, I bumped into Mitch at the Corinthian Casuals game, and we were sort of reminiscing, as you do, about the sort of team of around that time. And he said the one thing he liked is that he trusted the players. He knew he could deliver. He wasn't really one for barking. So he knew he had that spine of the team. Muddy, Dean Murphy, yourself, Duffs, and then Clarkie. He knew what to expect. He knew that if things needed to be sort of changed, chances are, and he mentioned you in particular, you would sort of like take it upon yourself to change a little tiny bit and maybe move the team around to get the results that we need. And I think that is a testament not only to the quality of the manager, but also to the quality of the players we had in at the sort of time. And in yourself in particular, that linchpin. And you spoke about Duffs there, that perfect foil for you, you know, that combative ball-winning midfielder. And I don't think he gets enough credit within that team from the fans a little bit, because it was always yourself who was the more creative flair. But as I say, for him to do his job properly enabled you to do yours.
Yeah. So it's a really good point, mate. I think going on then to coach myself and be a manager, you understand I have lists of things that you look for when you first go to a club as a coach. And the one thing you look for is a captain or a character that carries your messages to the rest of the lads. And hopefully he's one of them. If you've got 2 or 3, absolutely fantastic. And if I'm honest, over the years, the clubs that I've managed, it's getting rarer and rarer that you get a leader. Arsenal's a great one, isn't it? You know, what did Roy Keane say about was it Gibbs when he was the Champions League captain against flipping someone or the other? And he said, "You're in real trouble if you got Kieran Gibb as your captain." And you're like, spot on. You know, that's struggling. But that is so true. And also, I think probably it's knowledge. It's the crowd's knowledge of not just the flair players or the goal scorer. It's you gaining knowledge of like, well, hang on, what is he doing as a holding midfield player? And I think nowadays where you have kind of podcasts like this, or you can watch any game that you want, or you can go to football at any level, that maybe hopefully kids can watch and go, no, I just don't want to be a Neymar. I want to be that holding midfield player. I want to be that winger that does all the work and stuff like that. The only thing I would say to that, what is missing is the Mogadon monotony of the individual is more boring now. I don't want to go on. I never want to be that person like my old man. You know, like your dad, it was better in my day and all that. And I'm not, because I'm still involved a lot in football. But it's true. You can't run away from the truth. There isn't that character that, as you just said, Woody, 100%, that the coach hasn't got to worry because there's 2 or 3 characters out there that are going to stamp on it straight away and go, right, come on, lads, let's tuck in. Let's put the hats on and scrap this one out, or enact with a bit of character to drive that team through. So that's a really good point. And I don't know whether, I mean, you guys can tell me, Tabs, more so. Would you say Duff's was really appreciated or not?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Even after getting sent off on his debut. But as a similar point there, Al, you got his players, they wear these things now, monitors, and they're judging how far they run and the pass percentage accuracy. Are they really that important? Isn't it more important to put that killer ball in and it comes off once?
Listen, if you do you know what you do really? If you're watching a game and you've got a massive screen TV, it's like watching FIFA, right? You can watch FIFA and you can watch a Premiership game or a Championship game, and they're all playing through the lines, they're all passing, and it really is starting to get like watching a video game. And the reason being, there's a lot of reasons for it. You could say social media, I mean, come on. Can you imagine what we got up to if there was social media and cameras now? Really? You know, you'd all be in prison. So you can't have a glass of red wine with a supporter, can you, without someone taking a picture and going, he's drinking Merlot when he should be drinking Chateau Pap. What a twat. You know, it's kind of, I don't know, I'm waiting for the sportsman or the professional footballer that doesn't have social media and doesn't care on the broader spectrum and just goes, do you know what? I'm going to go and play. I'm going to go and enjoy football. Whether this will ever happen or not, I don't know. But it really is getting boring and staid. Even interviews is boring, you know, compared to what it was ages ago. And that suppresses character, and it suppresses it even on the pitch, because am I allowed to call him a twat, or will he be offended?
Right, let's get back to the football out.
Okay.
Do you remember in 92-93 those 2 FA Cup ties with Stevenage Borough?
What was that?
Do you remember those 2 FA Cup ties with Stevenage Borough? The 3-3 draw at their place.
What a game that was, wasn't it?
Oh, we did them buried 3 times, weren't we? And then the penalty in added time.
And I would like to officially apologise to Stevenage Borough tonight that I dived.
You didn't.
Can absolutely guarantee you, Al, that there's not one of their fans still goes now, mate. I really wouldn't worry about it. I seriously wouldn't give it a second thought.
I don't,
seriously.
Woody, I couldn't care less. It was a 9.8. It was a 9.8. Like, the timing of it was amazing. He can't see him coming in. I thought, go on, fling it, son, fling it. So, yeah. And then Duff stepped up, didn't he? You know,
he had the guts to take it.
Took to some cojones.
We're going on in that cup run, but in a way, that was probably our biggest disappointment that season, apart from winning the league, of course. It was Cheltenham at home, wasn't it, in the first round proper? We just didn't perform. No,
it was... it was. I don't know. It seemed to happen to us on occasions. You know, the team was highly talented. Could have gone on to many things. I mean, you know, there was always the talk of the tree. Whether that had an effect on people's mental states or not, I don't really know. But we was always up there, weren't we? But do you know what? I'm a believer in memory. Football's memories. I know you're probably different, Tabs. You're stat man. Whereas I will always mine is memories. And people don't remember the score. They remember certain specific things that happen within a game. And that were, what about when they won 5-3 or 9-0 or whatever that was? I suppose winning championships is one thing, but if you can create memories for generations that was passed down. I mean, even when I go back to Brentford, people didn't talk about scores, the games that I played in. They talk about the memory of going to Anfield, or when I used to drink brandy at half time with an old boy on the halfway line, or, you know, and stuff like that. So it's memories, isn't it? You guys, as you get older and older, it's going, no, I remember that game, or I remember that game. Is it really about, you know, yes, it's nice to win a championship and get promoted, of course. I'm not denying that at all for the club in the long run, but it's memories really for me.
Right, let's go for a memory from that season then. From yourself, Enfield away. We won 2-0. You got the opening goal, and you're searching for the memory by the looks of it. You got the ball on the edge of the box. You're facing goal. Peter Hucker, the keeper's practically shut down your angles. So you turn round and chip it over him. The 3 defenders running back on the line. None of them can get it. As recent as last week, a supporter emailed me about it.
Oh, really? Yeah, I think you do things instinctively. It's not a plan. It's definitely kind of individualism or going against the grain isn't something that you go out to plan. I think it's within your character that you just react in a mad sort of way, if you like, i.e. when I was coach, you're doing mad things. So it was just instinctive. I think if you speak to most footballers that do weird things, you don't plan that. It's just an instinctive moment in time. And let's be honest, if you actually thought about it, you'd never do it because the thought of falling, egg on your face, most people don't want to be embarrassed, do they? Whereas
of course, being two-footed, you gave yourself that option as well, whereas a lot of players might be stuck.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yeah, but you're not fearful of either side, are you? You're not fearful of where you put that ball or you turn around. It's not a fear for you. So, yeah, and to do it against Hucker as well, from, being a top goalkeeper, is great. I didn't know it was Hucker in goal, but thanks for that.
Right, another memory from that season, which Lee will remember well. Carshalton Athletic. Les Cleveley in goal for Carshalton. He's already sent a message because he's heard you're coming on tonight. Do you remember it? 3-0 down at half-time.
What was the score? 5-3?
5-3 indeed, yeah.
What was Bolton? Bolton must have been up to his antics. Did he get...
We got 3 past Muddy. He got 3 against us, yeah.
How can you do that? How can you score 5 at Carshalton away? You can, because of the type of team that we had. Who scored, Tav?
Well, we were third in the table. No, we were second in the table at the time. They were third. And the goals, bloke called Clark got a couple. Dean Williams got 1. Substitute Ian Rutherford got 1. And another substitute, little David Ross, got 1.
Little Rossi. He used to come on and score a few, didn't he, actually? He wasn't too bad.
And the following year, we were 3-1 down there. And we got back to 3-3. And you scored... did you score in that game? I don't know. I can't find it in now. But I remember the very last minute, there was somebody in the middle, but you just fancied his shot and it drifted just wide. Oh, it was so close to glory 2 years running down there. Wasn't to be.
It was always a great game. Do you know why it was? We knew each other. So I knew Jimmy Bolton and I knew Les Cleveley. So we'd be having banter on the phone on a Friday night. So when you went to Carshalton and they played they played open football and stuff like that. So there was always kind of like, and also Cleveley, I used to have a bet with him, a scoring against him. And I got this amazing photograph at Clarence Park where I think I've hit the ball on a half volley and it's hit the underside of the bar and gone in and he's falling back into the goal like that. I've sent that to him on many occasions.
That's what friends are for.
Yeah, exactly. So they were just a great, you always look forward to, there's certain games. Stevenage at home was always a good game for us and kind of Carshalton, they're always good games. And King, I loved playing Kingstonians because they were so freaking arrogant. You know what I mean? They were so up their self about it. And then we used to turn them over big time, which I liked.
Oh, we did, didn't we? 5-3 away, 8-3 at home.
That's one of my greatest memories of a football match was the home game when I think we were 5-0 up and Chris Kelly left. It was like Elvis, as Chris Kelly has left the building. It was one of those through sheer embarrassment. But what was the funniest was our manager then, Dave?
I think you were by then.
We had a do in the bar afterwards, fancy dress, and they said, "Cockers, what do you want us to wear on the match day?" And I said, "Fancy dress." So we turned up for the game. I think Wilco was in, Elvis Presley, Murphs. I can't remember. We was all in like hilarious stuff. And they walked past us in their brand new tracksuits and bags while we're getting a team picture as Elvis, Johnny Rotten, with all these type of characters, and they're thinking, oh, this is it, and we're 5-0 up at half time. I mean, that's a memory, isn't it? But I remember the football we played. It was almost like it was like a tap. If you wanted to turn it on, and everyone was clicking at kind of the same time, you could turn anyone over at that period. And yeah, it was 8-3 finish. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, you were manager for the two Kingstonian games, and you also manager, of course, for the Purfleet game, which you're going to remember. We beat them 4-3. It was in the trophy, I think, the week before, and so you had them down the park again the following Saturday.
FA Cup, was it?
In a league game, and you did your back to front lineup. Yeah. What was the thinking there? Just to confuse them, I'd imagine.
Very hated Purfleet, as in the way they played, and very kind of regimental. So they would man mark you, kick you. I think the manager was kind of that way inclined. And then I just had this epiphany of going, hang on a minute, what about if we put all the defenders up front and all the forwards at the back? And on the Thursday evening in training, we did it. And Clarkey said, how long have I got to play at centre half? I said, we do it for about 10 minutes. And then I said, when I call the change, we'd change over. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I think Muddy and Murph went through on goal. I think they went through on goal. And I think it was 20-odd minutes. You'll correct me, Dave. I'm not sure. It's 20-odd minutes when we then had a corner. I said, right, everyone change over. But what it did was it threw them. So now they can't concentrate. What's gone on here? And by the time they had kind of regaged their thinking, it was all over. And I remember the manager coming up to me and he said, I don't know what I've seen. It's either complete madness or genius. And I said, you go with the latter. You'll be all right.
Fun enough, I remember in those early minutes, Dean Murphy had a great chance.
Yeah.
Wasn't to be. Well, we jumped from player to manager. That came about because Steve Kettridge got sacked. We had a great run, 2 defeats in 20-odd games, something like that. But then we went to 7 defeats in 9, and Bernard pulled the plug on him. You got on well with Ketso, didn't you?
Yeah. Ketz I knew him from Crystal Palace, actually. He was a little bit older than me. He was okay. He wasn't the problem. It was the guy he brought in as the assistant. Sergeant Major, what was his name?
Alan Pluckrose?
No,
he was in the army as well. It was who was it? The assistant?
Alan Dawson.
Oh my days! He was not the right person for this squad of players. It was all regimented and kind of, I don't know what Ketz was thinking of, really. And then probably never really fancied it after that, especially kind of non-league level. If you've got somebody that's shouting and screaming at you and going, do X, Y, and Z, we weren't that type of team at all, as Mitch would adhere to. And then Bernard, I mean, I've never had a job interview like that. He just said to me, do you want to be manager? And I'm like, well, yeah, all right. What makes you think that? He said, I remember once when I thought you should have cleared the ball on the edge of the area, you should have smashed it away. And I said to you, you should have smashed it away. And you said to me, Bernard, I've never smashed a ball away in my life. I'm not starting now. And then he said, that's my future manager.
You came in as a double act with Duffs. Was it very much you number one with Duffs number two? Because you tried to portray it as an equal pairing.
I'd done that. So Duffs didn't feel kind of undermined, if you like. The honest truth was Bernard asked me to be and Bernard kind of suggested, he said, why don't you do you and Duffs become joint managers? That never works really on a professional level. So, but it kind of did in a way at that time. And to be fair, Duffs, I didn't mind handling kind of like talking to the press or to the players about contracts and stuff like that. And then Duffs would take the training in certain areas. And he was a good kind of fall guy to have a pop at people at half time if you wanted a bit of a G up. So yeah, but I love Duffs to pieces, but he does have a tendency to kind of self-implode sometimes. But no, yeah, probably the greatest time of my playing career because I had carte blanche to enact like any madness that I wanted to, and we did really. So
you mentioned earlier you went coaching in America when you were very young. I think you had a second spell, so you must have had one eye on management eventually. But that came to you very early, really, didn't it?
Yeah, the coaching has always been in kind of like helping people and pointing out things, and also I think for me, I come from an era where midfield players at a professional level were not in a good place. Let's put it this way. There, you know, if Carlton Palmer is playing for England in central midfield, we're in trouble. I come from an era where you was almost, if you could play football, you was known as a bit of a liability or a bit of a, oh, he's too fancy in this. Well, hang on, I'm only passing the freaking ball. You know what I mean? But you just weren't seeing the midfield, and I don't think we've ever really recovered from that. If I'm blunt, the midfield generations that were lost during that period. So when I came to St Albans and then was asked to be coach, I thought, well, there's only one way. We are going to play and entertain, and this is the way we're going to do it. And you know, and I think that's why all the lads are still close. We're on a WhatsApp group together, and I think that kind of bonded us as a team. Where you had a young manager, everyone loved the flair and the entertainment, the amount of goals that we scored, and they just talk about that time. I mean, Muddy said to me, it was the only time I felt like Franz Beckenbauer. And I'm like, really? More Franz Ferdinand?
Can I just say, though, Al, is that one of the questions that the fans have been sending in to us is that the role of the creative midfielder has changed so much over the sort of years. They asked, how do you reckon you would sort of fare now in your pomp? Would you be able to still play the same role as you did back then?
I think it's easier because you've got the whole fitness aspect, but then if you was playing at this time, you would have that fitness anyway. The possession, you're always aching for possession as a midfield player, and where they play through the lines now, you would get a hell of a lot of possession. The issue that I have with midfield players is samey nowadays. Where is the Glenn Hoddle and the Javi, what's his name, the ex-Liverpool player, that breaks those lines? So you're in left midfield and you're pinging it out to the right. It's almost that they have to put 2 or 3 passes together to play it to the right winger or to the left winger. But that's what's taught at academies. You know, you play through the 3 grids. You play quick, nice and sharp football, and it almost looks like it's a waste of time. You're playing 3 balls when a class player can really hit that ball out to the right or the left winger, and bang, he's off against the fullback. You don't see that at all. In fact, the only time you do see it is when the fullbacks, Trent Alexander and the left back for Liverpool, they actually play crossfield balls to each other. But I don't know, mate. It's a good question, isn't it? You're of a generation, you're of a time. And I think my personality that I am, I wouldn't have been able to handle the kind of staid, boring person. You just want an interview to be different, don't you? You just want to go, he was pony. That was awful. I was rubbish. Let's crack on, you know. But it's almost everyone's overtrained, oversubscribed. Yeah, I'd find that terrible because the whole thing was having a beer with the supporters after the game, and being a little bit cheeky and having rapport with the supporters. And if they didn't like you, they didn't like you. So just a bit of character. And I'm dying for that. I think the world kind of is craving. That's why they love the Australian tennis player. You know, the nutter. Why? Because he's got a bit of throwback to him. He don't care. He's got a bit of character. But as I said to you, we're training kids now. I've seen it at academy level to just be robotic, and it's almost like they're being trained on FIFA. They watch FIFA. That's what I've got to do now. I pass the ball now, and that's what I've got to do. There's no kind of, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Does that answer your question, Lee? Have I just gone on a bit there?
Comprehensively, mate. Absolutely.
Thanks, mate.
It's funny, Cockers. A modern game should suit you because you're a ball player, all this passing, but it's so negative. What, 80% of it? You either go sideways for a simple pass or you go backwards.
Yeah.
And they say, well, you kept the ball, so we can't lose. But it's not a lot of fun.
Yeah. You'd rather watch that. He's tried to kind of, I mean, I always use this as an example. If you go back to the Gordon Banks, you remember the great Gordon Banks save? From Pele when Jorginho went on the outside, right? Right. Follow it back. For me as a midfield player, I'm not looking at Pele and I'm not looking at Banks. If you look at the midfield player's ball through to Jorginho, he's hit it about a metre off the floor with backspin and side spin. And as it's hit the deck, it spun and rolled right to Jorginho, who took it in his path and crossed. And no one ever talks about it because you wouldn't, because you're not looking at football with an eye of a midfield player. But you just don't see that gamble. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's probably life in general now. Everyone is so freaking wary of saying the wrong thing or acting the wrong way or being labelled, right? That. So what does that do? It suppresses the human spirit. It suppresses footballers when they go out onto a football pitch or an individual when they're playing a game. It's a suppressant.
Of course, when you were manager, Al, FIFA had this wonderful idea. You know what's coming up. You're just about laughing already. There's a couple of countries in Europe for kicking. Ishmael League took it on, and only one club in the league refused.
Who was that, Tabs?
And that club got all the publicity. I still remember the article you got in the Daily Telegraph down there, because you didn't do it and you refused to do it. So it was great for us.
Yeah, I mean, heart attack for Bernard because he implemented it. Didn't he? Listen, let's be honest. It was man-made for me, wasn't it? First season in management, and the twats decided to make the worst rule in football. Seriously, really? You can't be offside from a kicking, and it's sizist, it's non-creative, it's everything. You might as well just have a team of 6-footers and just go, yeah. And you can't be offside, and your injuries, the head injuries.
It could be said it's an attacking thing because you get the ball from in your half straight into the opposition goal mouth. It could be said it's to be attacking and entertaining.
I don't know what Plonker would say that, but it could be said. The best one ever was I was on the phone at Clarence Park and I see Turvey. Remember Alan Turvey? And he's come out the dressing room. Bernard warned me, he's after you. He's fuming, right? And I was in the centre circle on the phone. And he's walking towards me and I know he's about to lambast me. And I just kept on walking further and further away to the corner flag. And he's getting tighter and tighter as he's getting to me. And I'm walking around the back of the goal as he's getting there. And so, and suddenly he's got by me and he's breathing out of his tuchus. And then he just said to me, who do you think you are? He said to me, this is going to be in the Football League in 2 years. And I said, I'll tell you what, if this is in the Football League in 2 years, I'll give you your year's salary, right? And I said, vice versa. I said, this will never be made. And I just listed the rules. I said, you're just an FA shill. I said, that's all you are, taking money for it. I said, how can this? And I said, what are you teaching kids? And I was running the St Albans Academy at the time. I said, well, what am I supposed to do? Go, all the good ball players, look, you're not included, right? I'm just looking for your brother who's 6'2", because he's playing up front in midfield. So it was the word, but I get it that they were paid money to kind of implement it. What's shocking for me is that, and maybe it's not in the light of everything that's going on at the moment, maybe it's not that no one stands up. People shrink into the crowd. They don't speak up. They don't say how they feel. I was shocked that not one manager out of all those ever said that we're not doing it, except when we played them. Because I think we embarrassed them. It was so embarrassing that we just played normal football and beating teams playing normal football. When it was let's be honest, it was a disadvantage not to do it. We embarrassed them into not doing it unless they were losing in the last 10 minutes. And then they go, no, kick it in. So
Alan Turvey was league chairman for donkey's years. Before that, he was referee, did some of our matches in the Eastman League.
Right.
He passed away in the last year or so.
I didn't mean to. Yeah,
of course not.
I did mean to.
Right, let's bring you on to one game. When you were manager, I don't think you played in this one. No, Duffers did. London Challenge Cup final. Steve Clarke needed, 3 or 4 goals to get the top individual score in a season. Of course, he got it. He got 4. We won 6-0. How do you rate Clarkey?
Little story. So remember Simon Webster?
Yeah, your mate.
My mate, he had a bad injury, and I went to visit him in a London hospital. It was in traction, and at Charlton, the manager at the time was Allan Cockram. And I was in there with him, and he asked me how much they'd want for Clarkey. So he was that revered. But as you know, with Clarkey, St Albans built his house, and his school money paid for his living. And I think Clark definitely. I don't know whether Clarkey could have stood up to the kind of, the full-time banter, the abuse. I mean, it's just abuse. It's great fun if you can take it. I don't know whether Clarkey would have, being the school patriarch that he is, could have stood the real haranguing that you got and couldn't be asked, probably, But as far as playing and goal scoring, 100% could have. Because he had the instinct, what you call the instinctive gene. You can't coach Clarkey. He just was in the right place at the right time all the time. That's just clever. So yeah, 100% Tabs. How far he could have gone in the program, I don't know. Because it's subjective, isn't it? You don't know if you're at the right club that they play you at the right times and against the right thing. But certainly with Clarkey, you'd have to play with 2 wingers. And stuff like that. So yeah, he could have 100%, like many of the lads, to be fair.
Because he was such a phenomenal goal scorer, of course, he made yourself, Duff and Kingy look much better players. Barry Blackman was a good mate of yours, wasn't he? Bernard went on about him when he was on. Could he have gone Football League, do you think, when he was with us?
I think Blackie was his own worst enemy. And then me and Bernard was his own worst enemy when we took him up to, was it Coventry? No, not Coventry.
Yeah, he went to Coventry, Wolves.
Wolves. Yeah, it was Wolves, because we took him up for a couple of days up to Wolves, and it ended up as a bit of a Jolly Boys outing. And that...
There's a story there. There's a story there that I know you want to tell.
Yeah. Well, we was put in the worst hotel ever, and Bernard said, "No, we're going to stay in this hotel." And unfortunately, all the apprentices and the young pros were staying in the hotel at the time, and they ended up staying in the bar till about 4 o'clock in the morning with us. And they was in no fit state the next day to go training, and we kind of got the blame. Well, we were to blame, and that kind of ended Blackie's chances. Blackie had injury issues. Weight issues, if I'm honest. But technically, at a point in his career where if the right club would have got hold of him, definitely a talent. There's no doubt about that. And really a modern footballer. He could play in that kind of hole just behind Clarkey and turn on the football, and he had good vision. So he had kind of goal scoring plus midfield vision as well. So I think he could have. But there's a lot of things that make up a footballer, aren't there, or to be a professional? It's not just talent.
He also took the worst penalty you'll ever see.
Who was that against?
I can't remember. It was at some supporters camp, but he's lucky I can't tonight. do you want to chip him anything there, Lee?
I mean, we were talking to Clarkey about just the magnitude of quality players that he played with, and it must tell you something now that all these years later, the likes of Jimmy King, Duffs, yourself, Clarkey, your names keep popping up. We did Jake and I, when we were in charge of the club media, we did a Twitter poll, and we, the best ever sort of City team of the last 30 odd years. And we chose the midfielders. And again, Allan Cockram, tweets keep coming in and votes. And it must be, when you sort of sit back and you look at sort of your impact on this one club, St Albans City, it must feel so good to know that as a player, even now, there are like parents telling their kids about Allan Cockram. He did this, he did that against Wokingham, he did this against Chesham, and it must resonate so deep within you as a football man now. It must be amazing.
I think well, thank you. But I think we're also caught in forever limbo, because a lot of ex or professional footballers would come out of, because there wasn't the money, let's say, would come out of the game and go, your natural progression was into non-league football, or you didn't quite make it as a pro, you went into non-league football. You can't see kind of players in the championship retiring and go, do you know what, I'm going to go and play for St Albans, or I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and things like that. And also we're suspended in limbo because of character, because of a time where there will be a line drawn when the character was killed, of the individual was killed. So therefore your remembering of characters will always stay kind of like for you, Lee, growing up as a kid there, and that to be your first season. Well, it's a bit like going to your first ever football match or Premiership Stadium or Wembley. You know, that's always going to be etched in your memory. But also I think for the players, speaking from a player, was the best time I've ever had as a footballer and as a coach, because of the liberalism that was given to us to do our own thing. And also, I know most supporters love and moan. That's what you do. You love and moan, and that's fair enough. You're entitled to that. But also, you've got to take into consideration, and I'll go back to Brentford. Brentford have it in a little small pockets, not so much as St Albans because it's bigger, but you still have those. It reminds me of St Albans. It's almost like you're twinned, that the dad takes the son takes the granddad, and then that kind of generation comes through and they look after everybody and things like that. And for me, it was always the warmth. I remember just going into the bar. Very rarely now do you get players ever go into a bar. Well, you don't go into the bar, number one, but that's where you build your memories and your response. And you know, I've had some amazing times in bars all over the world with supporters and stuff, got into a couple of scrapes as well, but overriding memories kind of having a pint or a glass of wine with a supporter, and you're now on that level, aren't you? You're not the player on the pitch and they're not the supporter. You guys are on the same level, and we need you as much as you need us. Finished. You have no connection. There isn't a kind of, you think you have a connection because you can see on Instagram what he has for breakfast, but there isn't that physical connection. So for example, we got battered at home to Stoke 4-1 at Brentford. And me and my mate Keith Jones, ex-Chelsea player, we was coming out the changing rooms, and you could easily skulk off into the kind of like fog air of West London. And we didn't. We decided to front it and go in the Bees Inn and have a pint of Guinness. Well, we went in, and for the first 5 minutes, they're kind of throwing Guinness at us. But after an hour, they're singing with us and chanting, and they like that. You know, the fact that you had the balls to go in and kind of address the situation and say, look, that's not going to happen again. We were awful, and we promised that won't happen again. And it didn't. But you see, you haven't got that now. So I think we all remember things in halcyon days and about memories and stuff like that. But I do think there's a distinct line in the sand now where there is no more character or no more kind of resonance with a supporter. You guys could tell me more about that. Is there even down at St Albans or not?
Well, I don't go in the bar anymore. I love the 80s and 90s for mixing with the players out. It was great. That seemed to get lost, and I stopped going in the bar. Jake's familiar with bars. He'll be able to tell you.
What about you, Jake?
But before COVID, there was to some extent still down City, not as much. There's sometimes a sense of they were, you know, certain managers ask them to stay half hour and they'd be counting down the minutes till they could go. So it's a lot harder now after COVID because, you know, at least at St Albans City, they're not really allowed to mix with the fans at all now, sadly. But yeah, it certainly died off compared to what it used to be in the 90s. And I think there's still certain players in the squad. I think David Noble loves hanging out with supporters, etc. But it'll never be like it was, sadly. And I think, like you said, it's to the detriment of supporters and players. That connection is lost.
It is sad though, isn't it? Because the thing is as well, you've got to make that connection early, you know, especially with the younger supporters. You talk about memories and events there, Cockers. 92, 93, Marlow played Spurs in the FA Cup and they had a little bit of a run and they were on the front page of the papers. Later on that season, they played us at Clarence Park. and they were still, they were still strutting around. We played Spurs. Look, we've got autographs and all of this sort of stuff. And the mascot for the day, he was in the tunnel, and he was saying, "Oh, Marlow played Spurs, and they're going to be a good side." And I remember you took him, you put his arm over his shoulder. He said, "Don't worry, mate, we've got these." And you led that mascot out onto the pitch, and you did sort of like keep your uppers with him, and you sort of you reassured him, and you were right, because we won 5-1. And that mascot that day was me.
Oh wow!
So it was really good, because you have that memory now. You have that memory that you've got the players wearing this shirt, taking care of you,
Wow.
and now you know that they've got your back, and you know that confidence in that team and those players was just another level. And I don't see that happening now at Clarence Park. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I often am, mate, when it comes to the team nowadays. But you've got to integrate the kids at the young level, make them want to come back again. A signature on a football doesn't quite cut it anymore. You've got to have that interaction in the bar afterwards. Yeah. Let them know they're important to the players and the team around them.
Yeah. It's a great thing you did there, Al. You actually subbed that day. You came on and scored. Dean Williams got 1, and of course Clarkey only got 3. Getting back to the players, one of your most significant signings after you lost Duffs was John Daly. He was terrific for you, terrific for the club. Maybe a more defensive player than Duffs. And also off a pitch, didn't you bring in Allan Randall around about that sort of time as well to give us a bit more defensive strength, because we knew you could score goals, but we were letting too many in.
Yeah, what JD was I remember playing against him when he was at Hendon and stuff, and really rated him as similar to Duffs in a way, not the passing range of Duffs at all, but more like an enforcer and what I call kind of like a wall passer, 10 yard. Just keep moving the ball, keep moving it on, and a great lad. Him and Blackie were great characters to have in the changing rooms. And then I knew Allan Randall because when I played for the rep side, the Isthmian rep side, Allan Randall was the coach, and he said to me once that when he was what team was he managed?
We led Chesham to the title.
Not Chesham. Before that, there was another team he was at, wasn't there? And he said to me, "You're the only player in non-league football I've ever man-to-man marked." And it's resonated with me. And I thought, wow, you're spot on. You're kind of you're clever on the defensive side of the game. And that kind of stuck with me. So when Duffs left, I got straight on the phone to Al. And said to him, he quote unquote, he said to me, "I would crawl over broken glass to be your assistant." And I said, "Well, don't worry about the broken glass. Just swim across the Thames and you'll be all right." So he come, and we were a great team because, as you quite rightly said, I trusted him to organise the back, sort of like the back 4, back 5. So we would break away in training, and I would work on our attacking play, possession, and character, and Al would work on our defensive game and stuff. So, and then when you just put it all together, it kind of, and it did work really well up until a point. And I remember going into games probably for the first time at St Albans where you were confident to win 1-0 or 2-1. Pretty boring. But we knew if we could outscore anyone. It was just a case of, hang on a minute, there's not 9 goals in this game. It's just 4 or 5 to us rather than 8-3 and 5-3. No matter how much of a spectacle that is. But I think Al was limited. If I'm honest, looking back, Al was limited as a manager, but not as a coach. Does that make sense? When you're a manager, I've been both. It's different because your persona carries the club and it has to carry everything. Whereas a coach, you're kind of in the dark a little bit and you just kind of get on with your job.
You're out of the spotlight, aren't you?
Pardon?
You're out of the spotlight.
You're out of the spotlight. And it's much easier the minute you're thrown into dealing with everything. See, that's what people don't understand about players coming up to you in the bar afterwards, supporters talking about contracts without, and then you've got the certain board, some members you don't get on with. There's Bill Nick, you're trying to kind of like get a pound note out for 50 pence, and there's Bernard. So you're dealing with all that and you have to have kind of personable. Whereas I didn't think Al was that character, if I'm honest.
Yeah. He had a spell as manager after you left, as you probably remember.
Yeah.
And it ended with a match in the FA Cup second round, which I think we can skip over, can't we, Lee?
Probably for the best, mate. Yeah, I think so.
Get in the sack, did it?
Well, 11 goals that day, Al. We only got a couple of them. After you left us, we'll skip over that. Your final match.
No, let's don't.
You want to do it?
We had a question from Colin Toms. He asked, "What happened there at the end?" He wants to know what happened.
Right, it's Soham Town Rangers. It's 6th of April 1996. Big game, East Anglian Cup, 1-0 win, but you didn't see the end of that game, Cockers. You left and were actually substituted by Simon Martin.
There you go. And my shirt didn't leave the pitch either, did it?
No, it didn't.
So I think it was the Wednesday, I was obviously the head coach. I think our contract was coming up or something. And I was running I developed St Albans Academy. So I run the soccer schools, and then I developed an academy where we used to train in, I think it was Broxbourne twice a week. So, remember all the lads that I brought through, the younger Tom, there was Sissons, the winger.
There's Tom, was it Tom Lawrence, Rob McCain?
Rob McCain, the goalkeeper. I'm still in contact with Whittaker and Sissons, the right winger. Do you remember he had the curly long hair? They all come through my dream for St Albans was to be full-time and have a full-time academy training with them and bringing all the kids through. So they went from soccer school to academy and then into the first team. And we had great success in doing that. And I met Bernard in a hotel on a Wednesday night up the West End, and we thrashed out a deal. I've still got it. One day I'll take a picture of it and I'll send it to you. I've got a contract written down where both of us signed with a cigar and a brandy, giving it that one. And I thought, yeah, that's brilliant. You can, and I didn't think it was massive amount of money compared to what I was doing, if I'm blunt. On the Saturday morning, before that game, I was in the office with Randall, and I get a phone call from Bernard, and he just went, the board hasn't okayed it, and if you want to leave the club, go ahead. Because there were sniffs of other clubs coming in for me as a manager. And I'm like, wow, where's that come from? You haven't even had the courtesy to really meet me, talk it over. The last time I saw you, everything was agreed. You were going to run it by the board, but that's not how you do business. And that's certainly not how you treat somebody. And I was fuming, absolutely fuming. And then it led to really kind of probably 24, 48 hours of complete madness, where I remember taking a corner near the burger bar, and I remember Lardy, what's his name, was standing there. What's his name? The managing director.
Graham
McDougall and the other one, Adams. And they're standing there laughing. And I just was taking a corner. I said, this is the last effing time you're going to see me kick a ball from St Albans. And I took the corner. I walked to the halfway line, took my shirt off, and laid it out to perfection on the centre circle. And then all hell broke loose. You're a disgrace. 48 hours, my phone never stopped ringing. It was unbelievable. Yeah, and then that led me to obviously leaving, and really gutted, if I'm honest. I think me and you, Tabs, have spoken about this. I've said this many times. I don't know whether you believe me at first or whatever. I know you was a St Albans nut at the time, and maybe I never meant that shirt thing as a disrespect. I was almost laying it to rest. If it was disrespectful, I would have just thrown it. I laid it out to perfection and walked off in disgust, really, you know.
Yeah, we have talked about it a couple of times down at the Crown, I think. But also in the press around about that time, you said something similar as well. It was never meant to disrespect the shirt. So right from the start, you said.
Yeah, never that. And then kind of never, I've been abused many, many times, but the game that we come back to the park with, I mean, do you know, Brian Marwood phoned me. He was on 3 Counties radio, and he said it's the only time we've ever interrupted a big game to go, hang on, what's going over at Clarence Park with that fight? Was it 5-4?
That's the Chertsey Town game, yeah?
The church, yeah, because everything had finished at Chertsey. It was one of my last games. And I said to the lads, will you all play for nothing? We've got to go back to Clarence Park. And we went back all for nothing. We was all on, like, I don't know, 10 expenses, really, because the chairman who run the business had pulled out because his wife was ill. And we went back and we had the lads, didn't we? We had Robbie Peters playing for us. We had Michael Whittaker, who saved the penalty. I don't know whether Lee remembers that. Do you remember that game, Lee?
I honestly don't, mate. No. I was at the back end of my career like a walking about like a raspberry. I played with a flipping caliper on. I was determined to play. And it was 5-4. Robbie Peters scored. I mean, what a unbelievable game. And then the supporters, it was kind of like being on safari. They descended as I was going in the tunnels, like throwing stuff at me. And then I got into a fight in the bar with a guy that was being quite abusive. And then me and Bernard sat down, had a cigar. And I think that was the end of kind of St Albans as we know it. If I'm honest, it was kind of, the dissolvement of. But I think Bernard lost all interest.
Well, you talk about memories, Al. That game in particular, Chertsey had no money, as you said. They'd lost goodness knows how many games on the trot. Obviously, going to go down.
Yeah.
And you beat us 5-4. And I've told you this before as well. In that game, you put through just about the finest long ball I've ever seen anybody do, from virtually on your own centre circle. Some people might call penalty area. Some people might just call it a big boot, but it wasn't. You measured that ball over the centre forward's head, through he goes and scores.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I remember it. Yeah, thanks. I remember it well. It was kind of a swan song. I wasn't fit at all. I never come out from a warm up. I was being stretched and massaged on the thing, and it was kind of just the emotion of going back to a place that I loved, and probably being 50-50 in supporters one way or another. And just really, it's the swan song. It's the finite of your finish with everything like that. Whether you're coming back to St Albans and winning 5-4. That was kind of your epitaph to everything. Of it doesn't get any better than this, chaps. This is what you've missed for the last season and a half. Do you know what I mean? Because it could have carried on. And I still say to this day that if we would have agreed something, we could have gone to the next level of. Especially my dream for St Albans was to have a team of kids coming through. And what Lee was saying earlier about, kids being kind of remembering, when you and I went out for a warm-up and things like that. But if you've got hope within that city of going to an academy and coming through into the first team, like the kids did, like we did, which I was very proud of, that's when you get the generations and you get a difference within a club compared to just getting players in and out the whole time, I think. But hey-ho.
Well, you and Bernard have kissed and made up since then, because didn't you two spend a bit of time together during the Euros this year?
He's got a place, unbelievable. He's on Facebook with me, and I noticed when he sent it, it was from a town right next to where I've got a property, and my sister's got one further up the road. And then when I was going out there, I messaged him and we watched every game together. So he would book a bar and then I would book a bar. And if I'm honest, he's still absolutely in love with me. It's embarrassing. It's seriously, let it go, mate. You know what I mean? You could have had me for another couple of years. You decided to trash me off for another woman called Mrs. Randall.
Yeah, you say that, Al. During your second time with the club, which was that's over 3 years. Disappointed we didn't win something more significant in that time?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, you can discard a year, can't you, because of the kicking? I mean, you're never going to win a league title when you've got, realistically, it was Nassim Hamid fighting Tyson Fury, wasn't it? You can't beat the kicking if people are doing the kicking. It's statistically impossible. But I'm proud that we never succumbed. I'm proud that all the lads and the club was behind us. I mean, Bernard, to be fair, backed me 100%. I think he loved the whole, as you said, the publicity of it. And really to give a couple of fingers up to Turvey as well. I don't think he liked him too much anyway. So it was kind of, we're not doing it. We're St Albans. We are class. We don't need to kick it in, and things like that. Do I win? Yeah, of course you want to win. You're in it to win things. But as far as memories and flair and attacking and players are concerned, then I don't think you'll ever see the likes of it. That's a bit, it's a bit down. I don't want to say that, not ever again, but you was of a time and an era that will take years for you to ever think, like, see that. You can use the Brentford analogy if you like. It's taken Brentford 100 years to stop talking about, you know, the good old days, you know.
But the good old days, do you think they still talk about when we beat them in the cup in 1924?
Oh, definitely. When I was down there, they said to me, tell Mr. Tavener. Yeah.
But you do laugh though, Al, because we have got a question from Nigel Colkin, who did text us in to say...
Not old Colkers.
Ah, there you go, mate. So what steps do the management or the team need to take over the next sort of 10 years to aspire to be the next Brentford to get into the higher echelons of Football League?
It's how I've explained it. The trouble is with football, and I've been a coach for many, many years now, is that it's almost like a contrast in theology. The coach wants to do it his way, but he's up against the chairman and the board, and then he's got the supporters, and he's never left. And also, people are bloodthirsty for success immediately. So you're never, money. So you're never given the opportunity. The only way, period. And because I've been fortunate to coach at the top university level, which means that I get my players from freshers, and some of them I can have them for 5 years, and you can see that development from an 18-year-old to a 23, 24-year-old. You can see their development because you're with them that time and you spend a lot of time with them. And the only way for success and lasting success is to develop youth. Forget, man, all the top clubs that can just buy in and do whatever they want. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about St Albans. And it's the connection with the city. It's a connection with the youngsters. It's the connection with the local businesses. It's a connection with the supporters. It's all that amalgamation to go, this is what we're going to do. Give me carte blanche for 4 or 5 years and we'll develop it and we'll bring them through. No, there's going to be hard times, but if we're all on the same page, the problem that you have is no one's ever on the same page. And normally the people in power are the ones not on the same page. I think supporters will go for it. You'd go, look, we can see what he's doing. My boy is playing for the U15s. My boy is sub on a match day. My boy is ball boy. My boy is X, Y, and Z. And you get that kind of affiliation. So you've got it bottom up. You haven't got it top down. So that's how I see it. And I'm fortunate enough at university level whereby I don't have that involvement from the gun to Canuckers. I have free reign of what I want to do. And it's great. I love doing it. So if that answers your question, mate, that's probably the way forward.
Well, last time I saw you, you were coaching the university side. Al, can you give a few details on that, fairly briefly?
Briefly, I was asked to coach UCL, University College London, which I did for 3 years, and we was like St Albans. We won everything. We won league titles and stuff. I've done 2 years at Cambridge, and now I am head coach at the 3 medicinal hospitals. So they amalgamated, which is St Thomas's, King's, and and Guy's Hospital. They amalgamated their sport, and they asked me at the beginning of the year if I'd come and be manager for the first time for there, which I've done. It's actually 4 years this month that I've run my own Down syndrome football club called Brentford Penguins, which is amazing. We've been sponsored by Brentford First Team and Brentford Lifeline, which is fantastic. And I also work with ex-professional footballers that have dementia. So I had a Zoom call with them all today with the likes of Gordon McQueen, Dave Watson, John Dean, really famous players and families that have suffered through the dementia. So I'm proud of that. Like we have a really good time together. So yeah, it's giving back time now for me and enjoying my football as well still, which I'm very fortunate. I really am.
Do you still work with Simon Webster, or was that finished?
I haven't seen Webbo for ages. He's a private physio up in London somewhere for Spire, I think. But it's funny, I haven't seen Webbo for a few years now. You kind of, I don't know, it's weird. When you move in different circles and you kind of lose track of people,
Anything,
Bernard.
Lee, Jake, anything for you to finish with?
I mean, I would say, your stories, they are legendary. Like Lee said, they are still passed down now. They resonate around Clarence Park still. And yeah, thank you for still being a legend. And also thank you for giving back as well. I think a lot of supporters will still be inspired by you as they were in the 90s. And I think Lee would agree, they still are now.
Thank you so much, Jake. That's kind words. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always used to sort of come down with my friends, Chris and Matt, who had your name on the back of their shirts, and they absolutely loved it. And the fact that you're still held in such high regard is testament to your talent and your commitment to our great club. So thanks very much, Matt. I appreciate that.
Woody, appreciate it. And I'm so happy. I got a little bit of a shiver when you said that about leading you out the tunnel. I'll take that with me, mate. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Cockers, you've been absolutely brilliant. It's great to see you again.
And you, mate.
Give my best
Take
to
care.
Vicky.
I will do. Pleasure, chaps. Keep up the Saints, eh?
Yeah. Thanks, Alan.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers, mate.
See you again,
Take care.
Sam. Cheers.
Bye-bye.